Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Nicole, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I would like to read before I move. So I'm going to be moving in just a little under a month, and I realized rather than playing a TBR game and randomly having my books picked for me this month, I really want to get to the books on my shelf that I'm most interested in reading right now. So let's go ahead and get going because there's so many books on this list. At best, if I know something about the book, I will just do a very short summary of what it is about and then keep going. So let's go ahead and get started. For the letter A, I went with Arabian Nights, of course. I am already in the middle of this book, so despite the fact that it's 960 some odd pages long, I only have about 150 pages of it left. I'm quite a ways in. Yeah, I'll keep plugging away at this, so this will definitely be finished. For B, I chose Beauty is a Wound by Kurniawan. And this book just has such an intriguing opening, and I have not heard anybody talk about this book or even mention this book. And I believe it's supposed to be about sort of a family drama, and particularly following women in Indonesia and an Indonesian family, and just sort of the experience of women there. I don't know how accurate that is, but I guess I'll find out when I read it. And this will probably get read sooner than later because I keep thinking about this book. For C, I chose Candide by Voltaire. This book just has such an interesting writing style and it just charms me every time. And he challenges whether that viewpoint on living life consistently optimistically is really the best approach to life. And it's also a nice thin book, so hopefully I will get to this. I did put Drood on this list. This is by Dan Simmons. It is a very long book, but I'm thinking that maybe I can get to it at the end of the month because this is a book that I would consider bringing with me when I move. So I figured if I start it this month, maybe that'll help me. I don't know. I might regret that decision. Anyway, this book is supposed to be narrated by Wilkie Collins, discussing Charles Dickens' last few years of life and just sort of how dark and sort of seedy and underground it became. So these are two authors that I really enjoy. So I'm very fascinated about a fictional account told by Wilkie Collins, who's an author I really love, about one of his really good friends, Charles Dickens. For E, I chose how do you say that? I really need to look that up. This is by Samuel Butler. I feel like this is not a book of his that I hear about that frequently. I feel like The Way of All Flesh is his more well-known book. This book is about a utopian society, and if I recall, I believe was an inspiration for Animal Farm in 1984 and other somewhat like dystopian novels and things of that sort. I could be wrong, but either way, I'm really looking forward to getting to this book at some point. And look at this cover, like so cool. For F, I have a little bit of a cheat because I realized after picking this that I had actually put it on my bookshelf and shelved it wrong, but I'm going with it anyway because I'm just going to make it work. And that is The Complete Stories of Kafka. But his first name's Franz, so we could say it's for F, right? Now, this is a short story collection. I have no intention of trying to read all the short stories and novellas in here. The one specifically that I would try and get to is The Metamorphosis. G is going to be Gossamer Years. This is the intimate diary of a female courtier in 10th century Japan. And part of the reason that I am interested in getting to this now is that there is a read along going on for The Tale of Genji. And after reading The Tale of Genji, this was the next book that I bought that I kind of want to read about before I reread The Tale of Genji. So even though it's not part of the read along, I thought it would be a good time to read this book while I listen to what they discuss in their read along. H is A House for Mr. Biswas. I have heard good things about this book, though I don't honestly know a lot about what it's about, but I do know the author won the Nobel Prize for Literature, as this book proclaims to all of us. So if I get the time, I will get to this. I is a book that I have been looking forward to getting to as part of one of my book projects, and that book is In the Matter of Nat Turner. And it is a speculative history. I specifically got this book because not only does it talk about historical information, this is a work of nonfiction, in terms of what we know up to this date about Nat Turner, as well as what we don't know, but it also talks about all of the speculative history surrounding him. And so this is going to be an integral part of my Nat Turner project that I am doing. I also had Jamaica Inn by Daphne du Maurier. I have read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier and enjoyed it enough that I want to try other books by her, and this is probably the one that I own that the most people have recommended reading. And then there's Kokoro. I feel like this has been on quite a few TBRs, but maybe that's just my imagination. But I feel like I keep skipping over the book. Maybe that's more what it is when I go and look at my Ks, I go, oh, I should read that. And then for some reason I never do. So hopefully I'll read it this month. For the letter L, I have Logan's Run. This is a sci-fi that came up one day in a conversation with my dad, and he had seen the movie and actually didn't know it was a book. But when we were talking about it and I looked up and discovered it was a book, I was like, oh, I want to read that. That sounds really interesting. So maybe I'll watch the movie with my dad sometime. So M actually has 3 books for it, and let me explain how that happened. So the first book is The Mysteries of Paris by Eugene Sue, but this is a book that I'm doing for buddy read, and I already was reading it before I decided to set my TBR up this way, and I have plans to keep reading it. And this is actually one of the books that's on this list, probably the only book that's on this list that I'm actually going to bring with me as well, which is kind of crazy. Another book that I had started for this month before I decided to make my TBR this way also happened to be another book whose title starts with the letter M, and that is Moll Flanders. I am currently reading this book and I am listening to it on audio. And then the third book got thrown on here despite the fact that I realized I already had 2 picks for M, because this is the book that I feel like I would need to and have to and want to read before I read my letter D book, which was Drood. And that is The Mystery of Edwin Drood by Charles Dickens. You can see there's a connection to them. So I feel like I should read this before I read Drood, and because I really want to read Drood, I feel like I really should get to this, because if I don't get to this month, then I'm definitely not getting to that until after I move, because I'm not going to bring Drood with me if I haven't read it yet, or at least started it. And you see how it all went downhill. Moving on, letter N is Native Son by Richard Wright, and this is about, I guess, mainly a court case about a young African American man who gets accused of murder. For the letter O, I have Old Guerrillo by Honoré de Balzac. This is a book that I have owned for a little bit, but my interest in it increased after reading Lust for Life. It was mentioned multiple times in that book as something that Vincent van Gogh read, and I think particularly that his father read and reread. So I'm not really sure what that means, but I want to find out. So I want to read this book. For the letter P, I actually chose a book that was on my TBR for May that I didn't get to. And that is the second book in the Cairo trilogy, which is Palace of Desire. I was actually hoping to listen to this on audiobook, because I listened to the first book primarily on audiobook and really enjoyed that. However, I'm having a hard time finding an audiobook version for this, at least through my library. So we'll see whether or not this book happens, because it'll probably depend on whether or not I can find an audiobook. Q is another book that has either been on my TBR before or come very close to being on my TBR before, and that is Quicksilver by Neil Stevenson. I doubt this will get read. It's not super high on my list of books that I have to read before I move or want to read before I move, and it's also pretty chunky. But I wanted something for Q, and of the 3 books that I have that start with the letter Q, that's the one that I most want to read next. The letter R is Resurrection by Leo Tolstoy. I love returning to favorite authors, and Tolstoy is definitely one of them. And when I was looking at all of my options in the letter R, and I thought this might be one of my pick, and I read the first page of this book, and it just reminded me of why I love his writing. So this is a really strong contender for me to get to. A surprise choice for me was The Story of a Stone. The other name for this that this is known by is Dream of the Red Chamber, but this is sort of a more extended version of it. There's a couple of different versions and translations of it. This is the Penguin Classic Edition. It is translated by David Hawkes, and I've been wanting to read this, and I wasn't sure what I was going to pick for S because I have quite a few books that start with the letter S. And I read the opening of this and was really intrigued and said, "Oh yeah, let's try and get to this," because I also think it would be really fun to go into my move with another series that is somewhat easy to find the other books in, slash I could always buy them. But I just felt like it would be a good time to start a series, and this was the one that I chose. For the letter T is Things Fall Apart. I don't know that this is normally the book that I would have picked. I was originally gonna choose my TBR by playing a TBR game per usual, and so I had already like played the game and put together a whole TBR for that, and this was on that TBR game on that TBR list. And so I mentioned it to some of my viewers in a live stream, and they were all interested in reading it too. That TBR is gone. However, this book remains because we are now going to do a read along for it. So that said, if you want to join me June 8th, I am doing a all day long read along of Things Fall Apart. It's not a very long book, but per usual with me, there is no pressure to finish this book in a day by any means. It's about 200 pages. But I will be reading it all day long on a live stream from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So if you would like to join me, if you've thought about reading Things Fall Apart, even if you haven't, it's a great book and actually one of the books that I've read the most in my life, along with The Phantom Toll Booth and Heart of Darkness. So I don't know what that says about my reading, but Heart of Darkness and this book honestly were due to college. Everybody loved it, and they just kept having us read it for literally every class I took. So, between the two, I like this one better. So, that's gonna be Things Fall Apart. So you can look. I'll be sure to post an announcement on the community pages, and I will also be posting the video link and that kind of thing. Once that's made, it'll be in the description box. Long story short, Things Fall Apart is, yeah, it's getting read in June. For you, I ended up choosing Uncle Tom's Cabin. There wasn't anything particularly exciting about this book that recommended it to me, other than the fact that it's a book I've always wanted to read, just to know more about what it actually says and not just to continue to hear about it, because it is a book that comes up a lot in American literature and conversations of the like. And I've never read it. So here's my opportunity. This is seeming rather long. Yeah, it's 10 pages shy of 500 pages. So it may go towards the bottom of the list. On the shorter end, I have The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith. This is supposed to be quite a funny, charming book. We'll see. I've heard good things about it. So it's also super short. So it's likely to get read this month. On the off chance that I could manage to fit it in, I also chose XX, or I still need to look up and see if this means 20, if that's what it's supposed to mean, or if you're supposed to say that's the letters. Anyway, this has been on my TBR for a very, very, very long time. I recently hauled it, and the idea of putting it in storage and then not reading it for 6 more months seems kind of ridiculous to me. So I'm really hoping that I can get to it. It is long, but it's also quite a bit of mixed media. So I feel like in theory it would go quickly. At On the other hand, I feel like mixed media books could also take more time to read because there's a lot to figure out and comprehend in terms of what is trying to be communicated. I don't know. I haven't really read a lot of mixed media books. I might not have read any. So there you go. Why is Yellow? This is a book I recently got in a book subscription, and it sounds really moving. It is translated from Arabic and tells a story of a man who gets caught up in a situation where there are just a lot of cultural and language barriers coming into play and causing a lot of confusion. Z, I only have one book for Z, so I guess it's Zanoni. And this actually has a pretty interesting opening, and I'd really, really like to read one of them before I move. It might not be this one, it might be Paul Clifford, known for It Was a Dark and Stormy Night. I don't know, but it would be nice to get to one of his books. So at least I've read one book in this collection this year before I move. All right. That is it. That's everything. Like I said, let me know if any of these books you feel like I should prioritize over, others of them. I don't have a problem over the summer or while my books are in storage reading one of the books that I own if I'm able to get a free copy of it. But I love the editions of the books that I have. I prefer paperbacks. A lot of libraries tend to have hardcover editions of books. So those are like all the things that are motivating me to get to these books now. So, yeah, like and subscribe, and we'll see what happens. And I'll talk to you next time.